Winston Churchill, a name that brings to mind resilience, wartime speeches, and an unwavering commitment to Britain's victory in World War II. But behind his celebrated image lies a series of secret plans and controversial decisions that changed the course of history, and not always for the better. From covert operations to decisions that impacted millions, today we're diving into Churchill's hidden strategies during World War II that few people know about. As we unravel these lesser-known facts, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. Let's explore the darker side of one of history's most complex leaders. It's the summer of 1940, and Europe is gripped in the violent throes of war. London's sky burns with German bombs, casting shadows over the streets below. In the midst of this destruction, Winston Churchill, Britain's newly appointed Prime Minister, faces a decision that will haunt his legacy. Churchill had promised his people nothing but blood, toil, tears, and sweat. But behind his powerful words lay a brutal truth. To save Britain, he would have to abandon the very principles he held dear. In a desperate move to retaliate, Churchill greenlit one of the most controversial strategies of the war: indiscriminate bombing. His goal was simple: break German morale by targeting not just military sites, but the cities, homes, and civilians who lived there. To many, these raids seemed justified. After all, Germany had shown no mercy. But to others, Churchill's orders blurred the lines of humanity. The firebombing of cities like Dresden, with its massive loss of civilian life, left even Churchill questioning his decision. "Are we beasts?" he asked his advisors. Yet despite his doubts, the orders continued. It was the war's most desperate hour, and Churchill was willing to risk everything. February 13th, 1945, Dresden, a city rich in art and culture, known as the Florence of the Elbe. But after hours of relentless bombing, Dresden was left smoldering, with more than 25,000 civilians dead. It was one of the darkest nights of the war, and the world watched in horror. This was the cost of Churchill's decision. To some, he was a hero willing to do what was necessary to end the war. To others, he had crossed an unthinkable line, turning the Allied forces into what they had fought so hard to defeat. As history often shows us, war has no clean lines, but in Churchill's pursuit of victory, how far was too far? As the fires of war raged across Europe, another crisis was unfolding thousands of miles away, a crisis that would devastate millions. While Churchill battled Hitler's forces in the West, a different kind of catastrophe was consuming British-controlled India. It was 1943, and the Bengal region of India was hit by a catastrophic famine. Crops failed, supply chains faltered, and the people faced an unimaginable choice: starve or flee. But as the famine grew, calls for help met with a chilling silence from Britain. Under Churchill's orders, resources were diverted to support the British war effort, leaving Bengal stripped of essential supplies. In a series of decisions that remain among the most controversial of his leadership, Churchill refused to send aid, prioritizing Britain's needs over the lives of Indian civilians. The result was devastating. Over 3 million people perished in the Bengal famine, a humanitarian catastrophe unfolding under British rule. Yet Churchill remained unmoved, reportedly blaming the famine on the Indians themselves, stating they breed like rabbits. British officials in India sent desperate pleas to London, detailing the scale of the disaster and requesting food supplies. Yet these requests were denied or delayed, with Churchill insisting that ships were needed for the war effort, not for relief. In fact, records reveal that while Bengal starved, shipments of Australian wheat bypassed India entirely, heading instead to supply British stockpiles. For many, this decision represented a brutal indifference, a wartime leader sacrificing colonies for the empire's survival. Churchill's advisors were split, some insisting that relief was essential, while others, including Churchill himself, maintained that resources had to be reserved for the British war machine. Historian Madhusri Mukherjee argues that Churchill's decisions weren't just practical, but revealed a deeper prejudice. The famine became a rallying point for India's independence movement, fueling a sense of betrayal that would resonate for generations. Leaders like Gandhi and Nehru pointed to Churchill's actions as proof that Britain could not be trusted with India's future. And yet, as India starved, Indian soldiers fought on the front lines for Britain, their loyalty unwavering even as their homeland suffered. This dark chapter would forever stain Churchill's legacy, a decision that cost millions of lives in service of a distant war. Today, historians and scholars continue to debate Churchill's role in the Bengal famine. Was he a wartime leader forced to make impossible choices, or a man blinded by prejudice and power? While Churchill's decisions in Europe are remembered as victories, his choices in India remain a dark reminder of empire's cost. And yet, the Bengal famine was not the only hidden decision that shaped his legacy. There was another plan, a secret project that Churchill believed would secure Britain's future beyond the war. A project that held unimaginable power, and one that would shape the world for decades to come: the nuclear bomb. As Europe lay in ruins, Churchill's vision extended far beyond the war's immediate end. In the shadows, he was already laying the groundwork for a new, more powerful weapon, one that would secure Britain's influence on the world stage. This was not just a bomb. This was Churchill's ultimate plan for post-war power. While the Allies fought to bring down Hitler, Churchill foresaw a world where new powers would emerge. He knew that to survive in this world, Britain would need more than a victory. It would need the ultimate deterrent. As the United States pressed forward with the Manhattan Project, Churchill became an active supporter, pushing Britain to work side by side with American scientists. He was determined that Britain would not be left behind in the atomic race. This collaboration between Churchill and Roosevelt led to a covert exchange of resources, knowledge, and ambition. Under Churchill's watchful eye, British scientists joined the Americans, pooling their efforts to create a weapon of unimaginable power. Historian Graham Farmelow wrote, "Churchill viewed the bomb as Britain's ticket to a new world order." To Churchill, this weapon was more than just a deterrent. It was a means to secure Britain's place as a global power in the post-war era. But Churchill's plans weren't without resistance. Many advisors feared the destructive potential of nuclear power. They warned him of the Pandora's box he was opening. But Churchill dismissed these concerns, convinced that Britain's survival required the bomb, no matter the cost. In Churchill's mind, Britain's destiny depended on this new power, and though he would never live to see it used, his relentless pursuit of atomic capabilities left an indelible mark on history, forever tying his legacy to the dawn of the nuclear age. With the end of the war, the atomic bomb became a reality, but Churchill's ambition to make Britain a nuclear power came at a heavy price, one that would haunt the world in the years to come. Did Churchill understand the power he had unleashed, or was he blinded by the ambition to secure Britain's place in a world that would never be the same? From the bombed-out streets of London to the famine-stricken villages of Bengal, Winston Churchill's decisions left a mark on millions of lives, a legacy woven from courage, ambition, and controversy. Today, we remember him as the indomitable leader who stood up to tyranny. But is that the full story? Churchill was, without question, the right man at the right time, a leader whose unshakable spirit helped Britain withstand Hitler's onslaught. His speeches rallied a nation, inspiring not only Britain but the entire world to hold firm in the face of overwhelming odds. But behind the resolute face was a leader willing to take actions that would forever haunt his legacy. His orders to bomb German cities, the decisions that left millions to starve in Bengal, and his unrelenting pursuit of nuclear power. These were choices that some say saved Britain, yet others argue came at too high a cost. To some, Churchill is the ultimate war hero, a man who did whatever it took to protect his people. To others, he represents the dark side of empire, a leader whose pursuit of British supremacy led to untold suffering for those beyond his borders. Was Churchill's harsh pragmatism a necessary evil, a price paid for survival in a world torn apart by war? Or was it the symptom of an imperial mindset that valued Britain's dominance above all else? From the starving fields of India to the dawn of the nuclear age, Churchill's decisions reverberated far beyond Britain's shores. His vision for British power left behind both triumph and tragedy, creating a world changed forever. As we look back on his life, we are left with a question. How should history remember a man of such paradoxes? A hero who fought for freedom, or an empire builder whose ambition came at a devastating cost? Churchill's legacy is neither simple nor easily defined. It is a story of victory and sacrifice, of ideals and contradictions. He was both savior and imperialist, a leader who would go to any lengths to protect Britain, yet often left destruction in his wake. What do you think? Was Churchill a hero whose actions were justified by the horrors of war, or a man whose ambitions blinded him to the suffering he caused? Share your thoughts below, and let's remember that history is never as simple as it seems.